And we'll be discussing Africa trade, the prosperity of our trade in this country. And it is by Africa Prosperity Network Dialogue. The event is scheduled for 2 days, which is happening on the 25th to 27th of January 2024. And it will be happening at the Pediasig Lodge, the Presidential Lodge itself. Now, I have some speakers here with me who are going to elaborate on the reasons we should be trading with value that is going to give Africa its prosperity. Prince Moses, he's the head of Communication Directorate, Africa Prosperity Network, that's APN. And he's joined by Wilberforce Osari, Media Relations, Africa Prosperity Network. Gentlemen, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with media. Mr. Wilberforce, what is the media's role in this trade sector?
Well, so the Africa Prosperity Dialogues is organized by the Africa Prosperity Network as an organization. And media coverage during this Prosperity Dialogues, which is happening from 25th to 27th of January, is extremely important. The network is anticipating that we'll have about 150 journalists covering the Africa Prosperity Dialogues. Now, the reason why we are heavy on the media is because the Africa Prosperity Network believes that the media, being the fourth estate of the realm, plays a very vital role in disseminating information. You know that the efforts of the Africa Prosperity Dialogues is to, as it were, encourage the full implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And so the media plays a vital role in pushing that agenda. And that is why during these dialogues, it's going to be very heavy on media coverage. We have a media village that is dedicated for the 150 media persons. We have provided adequate internet service there on the ground to make sure that you can connect and do your work when you are there. We are making sure that the media is also treated very well by way of your meals and your drinks and everything. So a lot has been put in place to ensure that there is good coverage for the Africa Prosperity that is both in Ghana and the entire continent of Africa. In fact, because of that, we had a press conference in Ghana and also a press conference in Lagos, Nigeria, to let everybody know that we're heavy on media, and we are committed to ensuring that the dialogues receive very good coverage. And so every media house that has been invited, including Citi TV, we are welcoming you to the Prosperity Dialogues on Thursday, and we can assure you that we have put in place adequate facilities to give you the space to be able to do your work and to report effectively the dialogues.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Moses, there is a lingering question of how to realize Africa's single market through actionable and bankable positions and also adding value. What will this mean to a layman?
For years after colonization, our economies are shaped by what we call colonial era commercial arrangements, so that when you drill your oil, it goes to an industrialized country where it is refined and gets back to us with enormous value. And what we would have spent or what we would have gained from the resource by exporting that raw resource, we would have lost it all plus more. And so there is absolutely no interest in just extracting our minerals and sending them back and sending them to those countries, only to buy them back at exorbitant cost prices. And so we're saying that, look, we hold all these resources, why don't we add value and trade? This should help us with the collaboration of the AFCFTA. Extract people from extreme poverty, and they're saying that by 2040, thereabouts, if this thing goes according to plan, between 20 and 50 million Africans could be extracted from extreme poverty. So the Africa Prosperity Network and its philosophy alongside that of the AFCFTA matters.
Why are there priorities on targeted sectors?
So these sectors, what we are going to be discussing at the dialogues, and by the way, to add to what Wilberforce Osari said, we had a webinar with a lot of African journalists, and we had a lot of connections, thousands of them, who were interested in what we are going to be discussing this year. And that is based on production, on value addition, and on trading. If you do not use this tripartite theme, you will end up losing a lot. And so what we have is we have 6 areas we're going to be discussing during this summit. And so we've got what we call the delivery, and then we've got the enabling pillars. So for the delivery, we've got agric and food sovereignty, we've got natural resources and value addition, and then we've got manufacturing. And then for the enabling ones, or the pillars, we've got infrastructure and ICT, we've got finance and investments, and then we've got transport and logistics. Now, let me give you an example of one of the things we're going to be talking about, and that is on infrastructure and ICT, which is an enabling pillar. Imagine this. You are traveling across Africa because you've got this incredible product that you want to sell within the framework of the AFCFTA. And every country you go to, you might have to change your chip or pay exorbitant roaming charges, phone calls. And then to transfer money, you would have to use banks, and those can delay, and delay means money. Look, if your bank transfer delays by a second, you could lose a lot of money. But in our case, sometimes it's for days, and it can't continue happening. And so one of the topics we're going to be discussing is interoperability for both roaming and payments and settlement systems. So when you look at this, you're looking at how Europe has done it, but we're going a bit further by adding payment and settlement systems to it. And I think that the PAPS system by the Afro-Exim Bank has been ahead of the curve. There is also another example called the M-Bridge, if I have a few minutes to explain it. Okay, so the M-Bridge was started in Asia with, about 4 countries, and that would be China, Hong Kong, the UAE, and Thailand. They represent various sectors of the economy. And the M-Bridge system was based on CBDCs, that is central bank digital currencies. They wanted to see how they could eliminate the foreign, the presence of, or the heavy presence of foreign reserves in their trade. Now, Africa spends or pays to some banks in the US, in Europe, about $5 billion a year for using their currency for trading across Africa. And we only do 13% of intra-Africa trade. And so this M-Bridge program said, okay, these 4 countries, with China representing the industrial sector, Hong Kong, perhaps the financial sector, the oil and gas sector, UAE, and then Thailand for the services sector. Let's come together and see how we can experiment this CBDC. And so when they came together, they realized that they had eliminated OTCs, that is over-the-counter payments in Forex by 98%. 98% just by using that system. And so why I was saying that PAPS has been ahead of the curve is that they've had this technology sitting and hoping and lobbying for African governments to get on board.
So why now?
Why now? Because AFCFTA is here, the agreement is here, and we need it done by 2030 to be able to get this off the ground.
Right. Mr. Wilberforce, could you give me a brief highlight on where it's happening, how it's going to happen? I mean, sell it to us.
Well, yeah, so for the dialogues is happening at the Peduase Presidential Lodge, which is on the mountains, our beautiful mountains. It's a beautiful drive. And so it's taking place from Thursday, 25th January to Saturday, 27th January. Now, 25th, 26th, is the dialogues. And so business leaders are going to be dialoguing amongst themselves for the 2 days. In the evening of Friday, there is an awards session where certain brilliant entrepreneurs on the African continent are going to be awarded. That is happening at Kempinski. But on Saturday, we'll go back to the mountains, and it's the presidential and business dialogue. And so what that means is that after the business leaders have met and have had their discussions and made their proposals, they are now going to meet the heads of states. So far, President Akufo-Addo has invited about 5 or 6 other heads of states who are going to be joining him for that presidential business dialogue. The business leaders are going to tell the leaders, the African leaders, that, look, these are the things that we are seeing. This is what is going to drive the achievement of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And this is what is going to improve businesses. So at that dialogue and after those meetings, then there will be a compact that will be first undertaken by this heads of states who will be present, and then subsequently will be forwarded to the larger African continent during the AU summit, which will happen somewhere in February in Addis Ababa. So this is it. So the media, once you come, you have a lot of content to report on. Aside that, there'll be other side meetings, side deals that you'll be reporting on. And so for every media person who's been invited, just know that you are coming for a festival of reportage, because you're going to have a lot to report on, a lot of content to report both in Ghana and outside our jurisdiction.
Beautiful final words.
And may I add that we're expecting a lot of presidents, a lot of heads of state, a lot of very important people, a lot of very successful business people. And also, I'd like to talk about the advisory council of the Africa Prosperity Network. We've got eminent personalities who lead our case for the international community. And so we've got Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is the former AU chair. She is on our advisory council. We've got Joshua Siao from, he's a global African. He is the head of White and Case for Africa. We've got Ambassador Amina Mohammed from Kenya, very important person who has been on the UN Council for quite some time. Crystal Jackson, president of the Africa-America Institute. We've got Dr. Eugene Owusu, who's former assistant or deputy general secretary of the UN, so a very important person. We've got Dr. Cesar Mba Bogo, who is former finance minister of Equatorial Guinea and also IMF country director of Mozambique, I believe. And then there is Dr. Amani Asfor, who is the president of the Africa Business Council. We've got Patricia Pokudiabi, who is a cocoa industrialist from Cote d'Ivoire in Ghana. So you realize that in the advisory council, it's packed.
It's well packed.
And it's
going
female
to be
heavy as
female
well.
heavy too.
And it is African.
And it is African.
Yes.
That is beautiful. It is African. We have been speaking to Prince Moses. He is the director, Communication Directorate, Africa Prosperity Network. That's APN. And Mr. Wilberforce Osari, Media Relations, Africa Prosperity Network. Thank you so much for coming, gentlemen.